Another acrylic painting today. This is the fourth part in a series of Christmas gift videos where I show my process for longer, more complex pieces. The others will be linked down below, and I'll probably create a playlist with all the videos, if I remember. This painting is for my little sister. I say little, but she's actually taller than me and not that much younger, like just over a year. But when we were really young, we were mistaken for twins a lot, which I think is hilarious considering now we look pretty much nothing alike. I remember there's this spread in our high school yearbook where seniors took pictures with their siblings, if their siblings were also in high school, and of all the siblings pictured, we looked the most different. A lot of people were surprised when I said we were siblings. Full siblings, too. My only full sibling, really, since the other two are technically half siblings, though that never really made a difference growing up. But yeah, this one's for her. I initially was going to get her art supplies since she's also an artist like me, but when I asked her if she had any inclination towards a gift, she said she wanted a piece done of her dog Diego, a Shih Tzu Lhasa Apso mix. He is, I think, 17 years old now. I remember we got him as a puppy, and Mom intended for him to be ours to share, but my sister pretty much took entire ownership after the first few weeks. That dog stole her heart. Not to say I didn't like him, I love him a lot, but he was definitely always my sister's dog, which was fine. At the time, I had a cat that was basically a dog, so I wasn't exactly losing out. And at 17, he's actually not doing too bad health wise. I mean, he's blind now and a bit slower due to his poor old man bones, but otherwise, really not doing too bad. My sister really does her best for him. So I asked her to send me some reference photos, of which she had no shortage, and I chose one that I thought had the best composition and lighting. I modified the background and foreground some, mostly because the blankets Diego was lying on had difficult patterns on them. In hindsight, I probably could add some sort of pattern to the foremost blanket now, but as of this video, I have not done that. We'll see if I garner enough energy to change that before Christmas. I doubt it though. The wood paneling at the back was pretty easy and relaxing to paint. It was just a bunch of vertical strokes with different browns. Granted, I think the wood paneling in that room that she took the picture in is actually lighter than how it appears in the photo, but I figure the main focus of the piece is the dog, which is where colors are going to be the most important. I'm also not trying to be perfect, keeping that expectation tempered. But man, this is an aside, I hate wood paneling. It's so ugly. My entire childhood home, which is where this picture was taken, is just filled with it. And this one hallway that I use for filming in the current house, yes, I film in a hallway. It's as crappy as it sounds. But it also has wood paneling, and I think you've seen it in some of the videos. But I didn't decide to have that, nor can I change it, so it is what it is. I still think it's ugly, but it's pretty easy to recreate in a painting, so at least it has something going for it. No offense to anyone that likes wood paneling. You do you. I'm just saying that I've personally lived with it all my life, and it's very annoying to me. Depending on the kind of paneling, especially hanging things up can be a nightmare, and the holes left behind, if you can get anything in, can be just super noticeable. And it just looks super dated and ugly. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I'll move on now. The next layer was the pillows. In the actual photo, there was a purple pillow on the right, but the pillow on the left that I paint does not technically exist in the original photo. I thought since the composition was centering on the dog, that there should be a pillow on the opposite side that isn't quite symmetrical. That one gave me more trouble when it came to rendering the different shadows and lights, as I had no reference, so a lot of the footage painting that was taken out because I have this habit of overblending and overlayering without changing much to the actual piece. I do it with just about every layer in this painting. But the right one was left in for the most part because I was going strictly off the photo reference and thus was more confident about how it was progressing. It really helps to look at the details in the shading and the colors that make up the shapes created by those creases and folds, to study them and try and recreate them. I learned more about how that sort of material reflects light trying to paint it than just staring at it. I find a good practice or exercise is to print out a photo and try to paint over it, color matching as exact as you can, trying to recreate the painting on top of it. It won't be an original painting or anything you can sell, but it can be incredibly valuable for learning how to better render and recreate what you wish to see in your paintings. And this exercise isn't something just for realism either. I've done it when working on Impressionist pieces, since that was a style I was extraordinarily familiar with when I started painting in high school. I kind of want to do another one soon. It's been a long time. Anyway, I'm sorry that the picture is sort of washed out. The pillows might not look that purple, but I promise you I was using the most purpley purples that I owned. The deepest shadows were a mix of purple and dark phthalo blue, and the lightest purples were mixed with a little bit of light blue and white in order to create a richer range in the shadows and highlights. I initially used straight white for some hard rim lighting here and there and for the blankets too, but I decided to cover those in the end because it made it seem like I hadn't completely covered the canvas, which you do not want in a painting. There are very few instances where you want pure white to shine through on the canvas, and for this painting, the only real place for white to make sense is on the dog, since he's nearly white to begin with, making the sunlight on him just about as white as you should get in a painting. It's still mixed with a really light desaturated brown, so even then it isn't pure white, but I'm getting ahead of myself. I painted and repainted and repainted the folds of the left pillow so much that I was scared the paint was about to start cracking as it dried, which can happen with acrylics when you try to layer too much at once with paint that is already mostly dried. It's happened to me before, but thankfully it didn't occur here. Maybe I've actually learned my lesson for once. I mean, I probably haven't, but I can be hopeful. I wanted there to be creases in this pillow that suggested Diego was putting his weight onto it, which is why I colored it lighter than the other pillow, which is further back in depth, but also further in shadow. Because ordinarily, the further back something is in a painting, the paler it should be. But because the pillow isn't super distant like a mountain or anything, it makes more sense for it to be darker. It's also darker because I know in the reference photo that the light is coming from a window directly above frame, and the sill would be hiding a lot of the light from the slumped over pillow underneath it. Anyway, I'm pretty proud of the rendering I've done to the pillow on the left, considering I didn't use a reference, which I don't suggest. Please always use a reference if you can. I took my understanding of how light worked on the other pillow and tried to apply it to this one. Granted, it took forever, but I think where I settled in the end was good. Next, the dog itself. I should have been more nervous than I was, but there was something about that day that had me feeling really confident. I accidentally started the nose and muzzle of the dog off screen, but not much was done aside from a dark brown and the gray mixed together for the nose and eyes, so you're not missing much. There's something about painting dogs that's super relaxing to me, even more so than the wood paneling. Although I repainted the dog more than any other part of the painting, not that you'll see that, because thankfully I cut out a lot of that nonsense. The face was easily the most fun because I was pretty much rendering it right out the gate instead of laying down a base color like I probably should have, but oh well. There's at least an effort to lay down a base. Since I knew there would have to be a lot of depth and tonal variation to his fur, I wasn't too worried about putting down a complete first layer. So, painting animals with fur is really a lot like Impressionism, with the small short strokes that give the illusion of more hair and detail than there actually is, so I guess that's probably why I like it so much. The rest of the body had a mix of the light tan, white, some yellow ochre, raw sienna, some gray, all sort of blended together. The way I work with such high variation like this is that I don't necessarily clean off my brush every time I need a new color. I try not to do drastically different colors on the same brush stroke, but 1 or 2 shades off can help give the impression of depth. It also makes the painting go by faster because I'm not constantly dunking my brush in water and brushing it off every minute. Once I had a pretty good layout of the shadows and shades and highlights, that's when I started painting in the thinner hairs in pretty much only 1 or 2 different colors, because I would leave enough space for the color underneath to do a lot of the work for me. Now, the amount of layers it took me to get to this point, because I wasn't quite satisfied with one part or another, is a number I will not admit to. But just know that it took up a good hour of my time, probably more, which I've conveniently edited out. So, okay, the foreground. If I'm honest, it's not my favorite part of the painting. I took the blue that was in the reference photo and was originally going to make the entire foreground that blue, but I thought that would be entirely too much and it would detract from the subject too much. So I ended up making the closest part of the foreground a light blue and gray mix, which is fine, but some of the folds end up looking really wonky, but once again, I'm getting ahead of myself. There's nothing really new technique-wise when it comes to these blankets. I tried to include other colors so that the highlights and shadows weren't just the same tone of blue as I did with the purple pillows, but otherwise it was a lot of the same, so I'm going to duck out and let some music play while the painting montage continues. back just to say that after I signed it, I left it overnight with the intention of sealing it in the morning. Well, in the morning, I ended up painting over several of the folds, including the weird tall one in the front, which I think I'm going to paint over again because it still looks pretty weird to me as it is. But otherwise, the piece is finished. I had a lot of fun with it, and I think it looks quite a bit like Diego. I hope my little sister likes it a lot, because this dog means so much to her, and I know it would mean a lot to have something with Diego on it. Let me know what you think in the comments, and like the video if you enjoyed it. Also consider subscribing if you want to see more content from me, as I upload every Tuesday and Friday, and not all of them are speed paints like this, I promise. I usually have better camera angles, but not with these. Anyway, I hope you have a great day, and see you in the next one. Bye bye.